Welcome to our Flipping the Fall webinar. Thank you for taking the time to join live. Thank you for watching afterwards. This session today is specifically focused on instructional practices that will be most effective for us as educators in the fall. And the following sessions of this series are more dedicated on specific note flight features and specific Google integration and sound check performance assessment and all of those other wonderful things. So make sure you sign up for the whole series. But today I wanted to talk about specifically how we can plan instruction and how we can be successful in the fall. I have been, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, just so we can, I have been teaching online for 7 years now, and at the university level, and I have gone from in-person instruction to online instruction. I have taught cross-country, I just finished a complete asynchronous course on Google and online learning. I've taught with Zooms in person, I've taught hybrid, I've done all of these models, and I've transformed several mini curriculums throughout, and I've done it with Schoology and Canvas and Google and without learning management systems. So I have a lot of experience in this area, and I've given a lot of PD. And today I really want to talk about instructional practices. And this is really coming from my personal experiences in education administration, as well as from a teacher and a teacher of higher ed right now. Before we begin, the most important thing that I want to start with is a true and heartfelt thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to learn more, to think broader, to find a way to educate your students. You know, this time of year in going back to school, normally we're stressed because we might not have the roster yet. We wait on the master schedule to come in. Even if we have our classes, they may not be rostered yet, or we can't be able to pull them into Google, or they're not loaded into Schoology, or the room isn't clean yet. We can't get into setup. Think about all the things that we normally deal with before starting a school year and how just stressful that can be. And then you have the PD days and rushing to get students in. It's always a difficult time for education. Now, I hate to use the unprecedented buzzword, ding, 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 but can you just imagine, I mean, just think about for a second. I think all of us need to take a breath, because if you've ever experienced trauma, or or any major kind of crisis, what's family crisis, whatever, you go into survival mode, right? We all and I think the important thing to realize is we're in survival mode right now, and the most important, and our students and the families of our students are all in survival mode, because for most of us, we don't even know what our classes are going to be in the fall. We don't know if we're going to be online next week or in person next week, and it's going to change, and it's going to keep changing, right? So before we begin, I'm fully aware that what I'm about to talk about are new ideas. Some of them may be radical to you. Some of them may be things you're already doing, right? Some of what I talk about is very feasible in your situation. I'm fully aware that not everything I'm going to talk about is feasible. I know that there are students without access to technology. I know there's students who don't have internet at home. I know students have family situations that do not allow them to be able to be self-motivated and access at home. And I know all of that, and it's incredibly unfortunate time for education, but out of any struggle, we can rebuild and we can become stronger. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I just want to preface everything I'm going to talk about with an understanding that I know that it's difficult. I know that right now is one of the hardest times education's ever seen. It's one of the hardest times to be a teacher, and not only to effectively change lives through music, but just to be real, to keep ourselves and our students alive. And as we deal with this, as our Facebook feeds and our news feeds are just inundated with mass outbreaks in schools and families getting sick and parents passing away and students passing away already, we're already seeing this. This is a very difficult time for us. And I'm going to be very positive on this, but I just want to acknowledge that hang in there. Take care of yourselves for your students, right? We need to put on our oxygen mask before helping others. We have to make sure that we continue in one of the most difficult times of education to continue to be teachers and leaders and mentors, and we do it for the students. So anytime you get down, you're probably already down. I know I am. And as the fall gets worse and as things continue to get worse, take a breath, see the face of those kids, and realize you're doing it for them. And this is why we try to change, we try to better ourselves. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint again. Let's get going and let's talk about flipping the fall. Traditional education. This is what we're used to. Whole class instruction, students sitting in desks, facing the teacher. Teacher is owner of knowledge. Teacher is in charge of when the student opens the book, what page, what knowledge, what's going to be on the test, right? You write it down, I write it on the board, you put it in your notes, I'm going to give you the test, you're going to take it. That's traditional education, right? And of course, in March, when we suddenly had to go online, we jumped to online learning. And I actually looked at a lot of articles and did a little research for this presentation, and I kept seeing this type of image over and over and over and over again as a definition of online learning. But the thing about this is still whole class lecture-based instruction just delivered online. We talk a lot about online or in class. We're going to start online, then we're going to move to in class, but we're going to go in class 2 days a week or online 2 days a week. We keep talking about these models. Online and in class are delivery mechanisms. They're physical places that human beings exist. They're not instructional models. We hear a lot about the flipped classroom. This is not a new concept. This is a concept that has been out since technology has been introduced in education. And I know many people are familiar with the flipped classroom model, but the general overview is traditional class, you're assigned to classes, you go to class, instructor delivers, the class is when the instruction's delivered, when the knowledge is conveyed, and after class, you have this particular graphic talks about practice exercises, in our case, playing exams, practice at home, and assessments. Usually assessments are done in class. There's a piece I think that's missing from this. So we have this traditional approach. Now the flipped classroom with technology allows students to come to class more prepared, right? They are given instructional materials online in advance. They can access these materials before they come to class. And then they walk into class prepared to have rich discussions and be able to work on that content. So in a musical standpoint, especially with this online in-person model, this does make sense, right? Students can use videos online, they can have access to tools that let them better understand music, practice, get some feedback before, and they can walk into class prepared to have a richer discussions, maybe work in small groups, 6 feet apart, however they need to do. And then of course, there's still checks after class. So in a lot of ways, and we see a lot of people talking right now about how the flipped classroom model works for this environment. Well, let's go on to another education model I'd like to talk about, and that's the hybrid learning model. And again, this is not new, right? If you're someone that has never taught online or never used online tools, you might be hearing about flipped and hybrid for the first time. This has been around for a while. And hybrid essentially is something that kind of started in higher ed, I think, more where you have online and you can go in class and there's a middle, so you have instruction in both ways. And of course, in a lot of schools trying to go back 1 or 2 days a week and online a few days a week, we see the hybrid learning model coming into place. And this can be effective, right? And what we're thinking about now is how do we have instruction that's available online that complements what we do in class, because this is the type of instruction that we as teachers are probably not comfortable with, but what is going to be effective in the fall. But when you think about flipped, and you think about hybrid, these are two great models, and I really endorse them. But here's the thing, there's another factor here that we're not just online, we're not just hybrid, and we're not just flipped. We are COVID hybrid flipped, right? Because we have these other burdens on us, right? If we're in class, our students can't sit at small groups talking to each other. We see the aerosol study, the more kids talk, the more disbursement, right? The words we say now, droplets, aerosol disbursement, unprecedented, pivot, all the buzzwords, right? Students still need to be distanced for safety. We're not sure, how to properly have them play instruments around each other. There's different modifications I know we can make, but we can't just flip the classroom and expect them to come to class safely. Online options for whole group, if you think of the flipped model as individual prep and then coming together on the Zoom or the Google Meet, or the Teams call and getting together, I understand that. But again, with the flipped classroom model, the idea of students can work in small groups, teachers in class is still walking around monitoring. Online, it's a different story. It's a little difficult to monitor those, right? And the other thing that we just have to know, the other term that we're going to have to just remember ourselves is this idea of rolling closures, right? The rolling closure idea is that when a student comes in and gets sick and has something, the school's going to have to shut down, right? And so this is going to be something that's going to happen over and over. And of course, engagement and motivation. This is a whole other thing. When kids are in class all the time, we're cheerleading, we're pumping them up, but suddenly when they're at home, we have to figure out how to motivate them online. So now we look at the flipped classroom model, we look at the hybrid learning model, we look at the additional challenges from COVID, and we think about, you know, what's next. Now, the other thing is that in March, when we had to go online, we started thinking temporary. And yes, I'm quoting Carrie Underwood here because I'm a big old country music fan. But we actually, you know, we think temporary, and a lot of us are approaching this as I just need to come up with assignments, or I just need to think about instruction for, you know, until September 8th when kids come back. I don't have a crystal ball. I am not a doctor or a scientist, but I highly doubt that we're going to see all kids back in school every day safely on September 8th. I just don't see it happening, right? And one of the things that we've been doing, all of us, is we've been thinking temporary. This is not our temporary home, right? We're not going to be safe until there's a vaccine and many people have effectively taken it. This is not going away, right? This is something we need to prepare for long term, but there's opportunity here, right? So one thing is we have to stop thinking it's only till September 8th or it's only till October 1st. And let's think about instruction, hybrid, flipped classroom. Let's rethink all of it, right? So I'm going to propose a formula. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm going to propose a formula. You have a delivery mechanism, right? And then we have available technology. And an instrument is a piece of technology, right? A guitar, a trumpet, whatever. And then you have this motivation factor. What motivates students? And like every equation, it needs to be balanced. So our learning model needs to balance the things that we have to work with, right? So let's look at something. So if we are safe in class, and I say safe in class, that means traditional students sitting next to each other, playing instruments, emptying their water keys all over the floor, you know, that kind of thing. And you have instruments and voices, and you're motivated by really rich peak performance opportunities. You have a whole class music instruction experience, right? And I get that. But with online, right? And we have online as a delivery mechanism. You have instrument voices, but now you have technology tools right there. And then you have learning opportunities that motivate, new individualized learning opportunities. Then we look at individualized, right? Individualized instruction is something we can look at. And again, individualized instruction is not a new concept, right? Individualized instruction is something that, I'm getting a note that my sound is, individualized instruction is something that has been around for a while as well. So if you look at individualized instruction, the idea is that setting clear and specific goals, making goals challenging, make goals dynamic. So there's 3, 1, 2, and 3 all have goals, right? Instead of delivering content and assessing content, it's setting individualized goals for students. Students own their own progress to those goals. And obviously there's an involvement with parents, right? The individualized instruction model suddenly makes a lot of sense right now. The things about individualized instruction that I think are really effective is they can be effective online or in person, right? Students can walk in a class in an environment, and they can be 6 feet apart with their Chromebooks, and they can be practicing individualized instruction at safe distances from each other. So whether you're online half the day, in person half a week, online half a week, if you're in class and suddenly the school shuts down and everyone goes online for 2 weeks, your individualized instruction is going to be effective. It's not dependent on the delivery mechanism, right? And of course, this is a huge opportunity for self-reflection, self-confidence, and I'll even throw in social emotional learning, which is something we hear a lot about, which is very important, right? This is the opportunity to provide this for students. So with individualized instruction, students are self-motivated by goals, right? It's different than standing on the podium saying, do it again, play this. They're not motivated by us in pumping them up to play that performance and make it great. They're individually motivated by goals that they can set. They're actively creating and doing right away. Individualized instruction does not mean students watching lectures and turning in assignments. It means students jumping in and getting actively engaged in music and creating music, recording, taking more responsibility for their own individual practice at home. That's individualized learning. They're collaborating with their peers, right? Individualized is not isolated. It is not isolated. The most important thing we can do when students are at home or are spaced apart in person is they don't feel isolated. Individualized means they're setting their own individual learning goals. However, they can meet those goals with their peers. They can use discussion groups. They can share their content online to get feedback. Part of the assignment process includes feedback during it so students can be connected with each other safely through individualized learning delivered collaboratively. And students are assessed on their learning, not their products. Individualized learning does not mean watch a lecture, do a thing to prove you watched it, and turn it in for a grade, right? Individualized learning means that students are taking ownership of what they want to learn, not what they want to turn in. And we allow them to learn that. And think about all the beautiful things you can teach with music right now. I mean, melody, form, harmony, how to practice, how to play your instrument or sing. I mean, these are things that can be done individually at home, but it's a shift from the whole class instruction model, right? So when I hear this, some of you may be thinking, wow, well, this sounds great. I'm not going to do the Tony the Tiger voice, but yes, this sounds great, right? Why, this is perfect. This is what we should be doing, right? So now I'll pose a question. And as a music teacher, I am just as guilty as anyone else could possibly be at this. After years in music class, let's say a student is in music for 3 years, maybe, and maybe they're for 6, maybe they start K through 12 and they're in music for 12 years, right? But after being in a traditional music class and students leave, and I came up with this idea because when I used to fly and do conferences all the time, I used to talk to people on airplanes and they'd always ask me what I do. I'd say as music, and people light up. They say, oh, you teach music? My kid's in music, or my aunt's son's friend's brother was in music, or I used to do it. And it always used to be a past tense. And I used to ask them, well, why do you define music as past tense? And the answer would always be, well, because I'm not in the band, or I'm not in the choir, or I needed to take AP theory to get a higher GPA, so I needed to drop out in 11th grade. But it's always there's an idea in music, and I'm not trying to generalize for everyone, but I am obviously making a generalization. There's an idea in music education that when you leave the band or the choir, you're no longer in music. This isn't the soccer team, right? Like, you can play music on your own, individualized. But after years in music class, can a student go online, find a piece of music and make it work for their instrument? Can an alto sax player go to their church and grab a hymnal and play along with the piano player? Do they know, or can they write that out? Do they know how to make that work? Do they know how to hear a song that they love and say, I want to play that on my instrument? Do they know how to adapt it? And do they know how to arrange it for their friends, right? Because, music theory, and once you get into it, I mean, look, if y'all have seen fifth grade math is hard. Music theory and fifth grade math are, you can teach students theory. You can get them actively engaged in being able to take ownership of what they play. Can students record and video themselves playing music? Do they know how to set levels? Can they make a recording of that song and share it with their families? Can they listen to music with a deeper experience and understanding? Sometimes we play the rep in class, but do we always relate it to when you hear music? Why does that make you so excited? Oh, because there was a key change. Wait, they just came in with a higher key without modulating, and that's why it was exciting? Or this music has an interesting tonal structure. It has, a really cool texture. I mean, can students understand why music brings joy and excitement to the world and be able to really have a deep understanding of what music in life is? Can they collaborate with music making online for the rest of their lives? Can they enjoy playing or creating music by themselves forever without having to be assigned to do so? Can a student Does the student turn the rental in when they leave? Do they sell the instrument they bought when they leave music class? Do they stop singing? Or have they been taught that they can actually just grab their instrument or just go in the room and just sing for fun? Not because they're assigned, not because they have a performance to do, just for the fun of making music. Too often, if we only have students create music when we assign them, then the sub-narrative in education is that you only make music because you're told to. And the danger, right, and this is a generalization, but the danger sometimes is that we teach students, maybe subconsciously, that music is something you make when I give you a piece and you play it the way that I instruct you to for the concert. And how many students have the opportunity through learning music in our education system that they can learn to take ownership of what they play, and they've learned proficiency on this instrument or on their voice, that they can just grab music, create music, record it, play it, and do it for fun. And this is a type of instruction. When you see this, you may wonder, why has this not been part of music curriculums all along? And some of you, I know that many folks in this moment are probably already do these things, but I just wonder, why is this individualized skills and opportunities not already part of our music curriculums, right? And this is the opportunity. So the point I'm trying to make here is we're not flipping the classroom in the fall. We're flipping the script. Welcome to Flipping the Fall. It's time to flip the script and focus on individualized musicianship and learning opportunities for our students. Because the first semester is not safe to play instruments, we don't know if we're going to have in class or on person. The one thing that can consistently happen is structuring our curriculums for individualized learning experiences that can happen at home or safely distanced in class, and both. So what if we spent the first semester teaching students to find and arrange music for their voice and instrument, record themselves and video themselves playing music, and learn how to have that skill and share it with others, listen to music with a deeper experience and understanding, collaborate on music making online, enjoy playing and or creating music by themselves forever without having to be assigned to do so. That's the fall. Those are things that we can teach safely, effectively, regardless of the mechanism, right? And for a lot of us, this may make sense, and for a lot of us, this may be a challenge, because for some of us, it's a matter of, we learned by chalkboard, write it in your notebook, teacher puts it on the overhead. We're used to traditional instruction. And when we go to modern tools, what we try to do naturally is we try to do what we know with new modern tools. And especially when schools went online in March, a lot of us, the virtual choir, the virtual band, we all rushed to our comfort zone of teaching, and we tried to fit it with what technology does. And we've all felt frustrated. If you're feeling frustrated, it's because of this. Too often, we're trying to create whole class ensemble-based instruction in an environment that is suited for individualized instruction, right? We're trying to make things work with scenarios and technologies that weren't designed to do those things. And when you're trying, frustration is a matter of expectations, right? Frustration happens when your expectations aren't met. There's cognitive dissonance between the reality and expectations. And it's easier said than done, but we have to go back to our formula. What can we do right now to plan for a consistent fall for our students? That doesn't mean, we'll just limp along with some online games or theory exercises, or have them identify notes for 3 weeks until we're all back September 8th. But what if we created rich musical interactive experiences that will lead us to a fall that will be successful for students, regardless if we're in class, in person, and when it changes almost every week. Online and in person are locations of people, not instruction. Whole class and individualized are methods of instruction. A curriculum of individualized learning opportunities completed collaboratively will be the most consistent and successful thing we can have in the fall. And this is what I'm proposing here. So now let's talk a little bit about music technology and how to accomplish some of these things. So the idea is, what is music technology? And I'm going to put, I do see your questions, but I'm trying to multitask, so I'll try to get to them at the end. I see a lot of people writing, but please feel free to write. I can kind of see some of the comments, so it's helpful. What is music technology? And I think for some of us, this may be a new venture, right? Is it music theory software? Is it composing with digital notation, right? Is it composing and arranging in a digital audio workstation? I think those are different types of composing and arranging and very valuable. Is it recording? Is it learning live sound? Is it learning piano? Is it kids making beats? Music technology, as we go into this, and if you're new at engaging students, it's really about music creation. Because again, technology is just a tool. It's a resource. Music creation is the area. This is where student-led instruction comes in, because a student is now in charge of what they create. Music technology is, of course, traditionally project-based, and a lot of what we do now is project-based. You know, it's our Google Classrooms and our Canvas and our Schoology. We're making projects for kids to complete over time, but it's process-focused. I haven't changed these slides, but if you think about, in a while, I've used this example for years now, but you think about the individualized instruction model being student-led and process-focused, this is what this fits into. And music creation is a collaborative process. It is not, music is not created in a vacuum, right? And if you look at the writer credits of any popular song these days, there's like 87 people on there. The copyrights of these things are a mile long. Trust me, we have to deal with them in No-Fly Marketplace all the time. And it's great because music is created collaboratively, and that's the beauty of music. So what we want students doing is collaborating, giving feedback, and growing musically. That's the ultimate goal. And that can be done safely through individualized instruction. The other opportunity we have now is to incorporate popular music and culturally diverse music, right? Now is the time of any other time to get students to take the music that they're listening to and be able to figure out how to play that on their instrument, figure out how to musically make it work in the right range, what a transposing instrument does, how to arrange it for a small ensemble, how to arrange it with a small ensemble with transposing instruments, how to simplify melodies, how to think about different textures, how to just make music work, but starting with a motivational factor and an engagement factor of something they're already motivated to do. I love this song. It brings me joy. It brings me happiness. I would love to use the proficiency I've learned, or I am learning on my instrument, to be able to accomplish this goal. And so that we can incorporate our popular music, and we can incorporate culturally diverse music. We have the opportunity through our individualized assignments to guide students to take time now to understand and to appreciate and to seek out music created by people of all colors, and to seek out music of all different cultures, right? This is a time where we can directly address the traditional biases in education and go head on and say, look, we're going to do a lesson on Black composers. We're going to arrange the music of Black musicians, and we're going to focus on this now. And we're going to actually seek out these personalized learning experiences can be meaningful for all students. And there's nothing stopping us, because yes, our traditional curriculums might not be accessible right now, right? We may not have festival, we may not have marching band shows. We don't, you know, so now we have an opportunity to create something new. And now that's a huge opportunity, right? So let's take this as an opportunity to create something new and create individualized learning experiences, but not creating those out of, you know, what we've always done, but think about what engages students. Someone just asked a great question about copyright music. And I, you know, with No Flight Learn, just quick thing, you have access to thousands of pieces of music that you have the legal right to arrange as you need it for your students. With No Flight Marketplace, you can buy music as notation files and pay for the number of users and be able to arrange those and make you work. We as a publisher, as a Howland & Company, have made accessible thousands and thousands of pieces of music that are legally allowed. And we can of course talk about these, and we'll talk about them a little bit on Tuesday's webinar as well. But we have the rights to let you arrange music. And that's one of the beauties of No Flight Learn, not to get on that, but with No Flight Learn, the access to the content is a notation file. So you can notate and arrange that music as needed. It is not a static piece of music that you play it and get a grade and move on. It's more than that, right? And of course, you can take that music and play it and get a grade and move on as well. So if I'm looking at technology for the fall to engage student with, a digital audio workstation like Soundtrap, I think is really valuable. I think it's something that's amazing to use, that can be used by students to create, produce, record their music. This is a really, really great value at this time. So a digital audio workstation is a key component, I think, of individualized curriculum when students are investing in learning music. Of course, a music notation software, and there's one I would recommend, of course, is incredibly valuable right now. In addition, a music performance assessment software, some way to get automated feedback and have accountability. And of course, we've just launched SoundCheck at No Flight that gives you automated performance assessment. So using these type of tools, you can provide students individualized instruction that can meet their needs as they go. Now, let's talk a little bit about creativity. And this is something I like to talk about as we go. I'm just looking at some of the questions here. With creativity, a lot of us are not used to having students create. I was there. I taught grades 3 through 8 for 6 years full time. I've taught higher ed for 10 years now. And for me, I very much started out as a band director and very much in marching band. I've taught marching bands forever, drum corps guy, the whole thing. And I was very used to do this, play this music. I'm going to get you to the highest performance level of this piece. Even my elementary students, we're going to do these programs. We're going to do great performances. We're going to go out there, wow the parents, all of that. It was a struggle for me to get used to having students create music, but through starting music technology programs and learning, from students, I figured a lot of things out. And one thing is that when you approach creativity, there's a natural bias, and there's sort of a polarized view that is this image that there's some part of people, this is the right brain, left brain model, obviously, that creativity is something you have or you don't. Either you're the intellectual, you make lists, and I'm a list person. I got my notebook right here. I make lists and cross it off. I make lists of lists, right? I remake lists twice a day. So, you set the alarm, wake up first thing in the morning, you're a type A person, or you're a creative person. You can draw so well, and you're always telling funny jokes. You're so loud at parties. You're just so creative. These sort of stereotypes we get at people. But the important thing to remember is that having students create music, having students take their own choices is a creative skill, and we cannot approach creativity by giving our fears and our traditional views to our students. I just finished a graduate course I was teaching. I had 92 students, and I graded 92 times 7 assignments, for weeks. And I saw a lot of examples of teachers that we naturally want to put our biases into our assignments. I had one that said, "Don't panic," in capital letters, or "Don't worry, you can do this. It's okay, just try it." And we tend to approach creative assignments like that. And my feedback to those assignments is, wait a minute, how do you know the kid's worried? How do you know they're panicking? How do you know they're afraid of it? When you make an assignment that says, just try it, don't be afraid, that tells everyone you should be afraid, right? And so a lot of us as music teachers, we tend to be kind of the organized person. And so we have fears of creativity. So the thing I would say about creativity, it's not about engaging the right brainers and frustrating the left brainers. Having students be creative is truly about having students, this idea of, to live a creative life, we can lose our fear of being wrong. It's about making assignments that don't have only one right answer, that have many right answers, right? That students have a choice as to what they turn in. It's not write out D major and you get 5 points per note, and for every hashtag you miss, you lose 10 points. It's, here's a song with 2 hashtags, compose something that sounds like a major key. It's a subtle difference, right? But it's an important difference because one has student choice and voice and a goal, and the other has do it and get it right or get it wrong. And that's the main difference that's important to think about. Now, so when we think about creativity, there's different models of creativity out there. And some of the models, I'll briefly mention this idea of big C creativity tends to be very, large scale, world changing contributions. Fire, the wheel, Model T Ford, maybe the airplane, that was a good one, the iPhone, Hamilton the musical, whatever it is, like things that are changing. And these people are so creative, and Lin-Manuel was so creative to do Hamilton, and of course he was. But society tends to think of creativity being life-changing, never been done before type goals. Therefore, students tend to think about creativity that way. So if you say, hey, we're going to create, or the thing I would strongly urge you never to say to students, which is just be creative, right? That can mean something different to students of like, okay, be creative could mean to a student, I have to come up with something no one's ever done before that changes the world, or I'm not valuable. And especially when they're at home behind that Chromebook and we can't be with them, we have to be very careful about their social emotional right now and how we approach things. So you think about little C creativity as product oriented. Every little decision you make, even the decisions a student makes in their own, set your own learning goal, set your own practice goal for at home, make a Google form that sets 5 areas of your practice that you want to improve, and make a 5-point scale and define what each of those points is, and set a goal and talk about how long it's taking to get. Just having students be part of that process, that's a creative process, right? And that's really important that we engage. That's individualized learning, engaging students in the decision making and having them part of that. And then this idea of mini C creativity. This one is important in that this is intrapersonal. This is when we guide students to figure it out on their own, right? So I'll go back to my D major idea. Like I can go D to D on the treble clef and say, enter all the notes between and put the hashtags on the right place, and you'll get an A. Or I can say, here's a piece of music in Noteflight. It has 2 hashtags, and just write something that sounds major, and they figured out, and they say, oh, if I go like A, B, C sharp, D at the end, that sounds like it resolves, right? If I go from C sharp to D at the end, that makes sense. Ooh, I know that sound. And then they'll start playing with notes. Oh, you know what? That sounds like do dee dee do dee 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 dee. I know that song. I've seen it happen. When you give students that freedom, the light bulbs start firing. They say, oh my gosh, I just was playing with notes and I discovered this. And then, it could be like twinkle, it could be 1 1 5 5 6 6 5, whatever it is. But I've seen students stumble upon that and they just light up, and they have what I call a mini C moment. Like, I discovered that. Well, they didn't discover a fifth. They didn't discover Twinkle Twinkle. They didn't discover that. I mean, they didn't discover it, right? Columbus didn't discover America. It was already, people already knew where it was. People were there, right? But they found it for the first time. And to them, it's new. And to them, there's an interpersonal moment. And if we could guide students to figuring out music through melody and harmony and texture to create these individualized assignments that put them on a path with a goal, and through that path, they discover more about music and themselves and their own playing, that is effective individualized instruction. And if through that journey, we can get them to share their learning with others and be able to articulate through peer reviews and feedback, that is individualized instruction, created collaboratively. That's the goal for the fall. That's where we can be successful the entire time. I don't really call them hashtags with kids, y'all. Calm down. I call them sharps. It's just a joke. So a couple people blasted me for calling sharps hashtags. They're sharps. I know that they look different. I know that they're formed differently. So now let's talk about teaching music creation. So I have a few tips, right? Let's think about how we can approach some of these assignments. And I've used these in other presentations, but I think they're valuable now. Getting started can be short lessons. We don't have to go out of the gate with long, complicated assignments. For a lot of us in college, we tend to learn a lot of theory before we could compose, but short assignments, 4 measures, 8 measures, get started with something consistent just to get through the process and to get praise, to build confidence, right? And that's coming up. But it can be 8 measures, and they can scaffold, right? Short mini bites of compose an 8-measure melody. Now add a second part and add one note that sounds good with it. Let's start building harmony. Okay, now let's compose a second 8-measure second that sounds different. Let's call it like a B section, right? So you can scaffold small pieces, right? You don't have to teach music theory forever to get to the point. So short lessons is a start. Build off what you have. Nobody says creativity is originality, right? Look at Disney. They're just making the old stuff with new people now, right? So it's okay to use what you have and do a new take on it. Taking the melodies of some piece you're trying to learn, taking the melody of a pop song you're learning, grabbing and investing in learning the music of Black composers and arrangers right now, using that to create and manipulate and learn and explore, that is really, really powerful right now. So when you think about creative, so many times with creating music, we tend to just start with a blank slate. That's the most difficult place to start, right? Start with something. Change it up, add a harmony, manipulate it, add a second ending, reformat it, use the notes of this and this, keep the rhythm and change the notes, but that's the easiest way to get kids started, right? And praise their creativity for the changes they make and the decisions they make. Focus on a skill. We guide students to that mini C musical skill. So maybe it is orchestration. I haven't talked about that one yet. So maybe we take 4 lines, a 4-part melody. Maybe we grab something from the Noteflight Learn content libraries. That's a string arrangement. We say, how do I make this work for choir? What if we took this and put it in a key that worked for voices and added lyrics, and then we made this into an SATB or how do we an SSAB? Maybe we can make this work somehow for voices, or maybe we can work this for a small ensemble brass group. Whatever it is, like you can reorchestrate, rearrange, but you're focusing on orchestration. Or what if we did a melody and said, now write a second thing that uses the same rhythm but has different notes that sounds good with the first thing. Well, now I'm leading students toward what a counter melody is, right? So you see, you can focus on a skill through small assignments using existing pieces. Create, perform, respond, connect. We understand that, too often when we start creating music, we say that we're only creating. We check, okay, anchor standards 1, 2, 3. That's what I'm doing because I am creating. We used to be performing 4, 5, 6, but now we're just creating. So we're only 1, 2, 3. That's not true. When a student creates that melody and they share it to get feedback with a partner, well, that's responding. So now we're in that world, right? When they present their work, for a student to compose something in Noteflight or record something in Soundcheck and get that score goal and be able to show it and say, look, I got the score goal. It took me 8 attempts and here's how I improved. I kept missing this note, but I slowed it down and practiced, and this is how I got there. To be able to articulate and present what they did and how they got there, that's performing and in a lot of ways connecting, because they can understand, and then obviously we can connect the music we're doing to other parts of society and how it fits. So creating music and presenting it, sharing with the class, giving feedback to others, having rich discussions about how that music is part of the larger society. Create, perform, respond, connect in every lesson, right? And then of course, build confidence. This is what we need right now, right? So we can't just have students create something, turn it in. You got an 89 because you missed 3 things, right? Confidence is in the assessment. Confidence is in the assessment. When we're on the podium and all the kids are playing instruments together, 1 foot apart without masks on one day, and we're singing their hearts out in the risers, and we're saying, come on, you can do it, yay, one more time, and we're pumping them up, we are building confidence through our motivation as teachers in front of a whole class. When students are composing, creating, recording, their individualized learning goals that they're creating, we build confidence through the feedback we give. And so it's really important that feedback and the way we think about assessment is tweaked. Yes, we're going to talk about assessment. So how do you do that? Well, student-led learning is about differentiating. It's about allowing students to explore. We create opportunities. We use active engagement. I am so, if you know me at all, I'm active on all the Facebook groups. I'm constantly trying to provide feedback. I'm teaching core. I'm trying to just invest myself in all areas of education to try to help in any way I can. And the one thing I continue to see is, does anyone have a program they know of that will give interval assignments and note naming games that automatically assign them in Google. To be honest, personal opinion, I cringe. I don't want students isolated at home just learning the names of notes. I want them composing and telling me the names of the notes. I want them taking 3 notes and writing do 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 whatever, and then writing the names of the notes over top. Why can't they create something they're proud of and share with their mama while learning notes? It's not just about identifying the notes and getting a grade. It's about active engagement, because that's that times motivation factor in the formula. And if we don't have that times motivation and engagement, especially that's the key to individualized. They have to want to do it. They have to set a goal. They have to be engaged. So the way we assess, and it's really about creating sandboxes. That's why this picture is here. Personalized instruction is every kid creates their own sandbox. How much sand, how much water in the pail do you have to work with, what type of shovel. But once you're in that sandbox, you have a goal. Is it a castle? Is it a castle with a moat? Is it burying your best friend? Whatever it is. But in that sandbox, they have a goal and they have resources. And then it's messy. And if you don't like something, you can smush it and try it again. And you can work and you can keep and you can go. That is individualized learning. Build a sandbox for each child. Or better yet, have each child construct their own sandbox and set their own goal and learn to do that. Assessment. I have 5 ideas on assessment. What can quantitatively be assessed is not always what should be assessed. We're all guilty of this. Guilty as charged right here. I'll admit it. Sometimes we make assignments and we think about assessment later and we say, oh yeah, I gotta grade this. Okay, well, let me see. What can I see and slap a number on? Okay, well, it needs to be 8 measures, so that's 10 points. Well, it needs to be in D major, so there has to be 2 sharps, not hashtags, but we tend to just, some of us, slap numbers on the things we can see and call that an assessment. But what can be easily assessed is not what should be assessed. What should be assessed is the student's ability to articulate their own learning, to be able to give feedback, because more importantly, what you assess directly affects what is learned. How many times have you heard this in class? Is this gonna be on the test? How many times have you asked that in college? Is this gonna be on the test? Is this gonna be on the test? What is that question? Are you gonna assess me on this? Because if not, I don't consider it valuable. What you assess directly affects what's learned. If you want students to invest in the process and give feedback to each other and to reflect and create their own individualized learning plan, then you need to assess the individualized learning plan, right? That's exactly the goal. So that's the thing. We need to make sure our assessment covers that. And we want to assess the entire process, not only the product. In fact, I would argue in an article coming out next month and Southwest Musician for TMEA, I do argue that you can actually create an assignment where a student has rich learning but never leaves with the product. There may not be a composition or even a recording or a playing exam left, but they may have just worked on range or worked on a composition skill, whatever it is. So assess the process of learning, and these come through Google Forms, reflections, things like that. I see lots of questions on NoteFlight. NoteFlight integrates with Canvas, Google, Schoology, Moodle, Music First. So you can integrate NoteFlight directly with these and turn in your NoteFlight assignments and your sound check performance assessment into discussions in Schoology and discussion forums in Canvas and question forums in Google. You can do all of this, right? Assessment should provide feedback on how to do better next time, not explain why a grade was given this time, right? And this is a really important part because we're so used to, okay, you did this, okay, well, here's the rubric. Well, you didn't do, so you're left with an 81. These kids are at home. They need to be engaged. They need that times motivation factor. So the goal is that next time forward, right? Assess forward, because the ultimate goal of education is to make these children better human beings every single day. Assessment is how to be better next time. It's a simple flip. 5 points off because you missed the rhythm, right? Next time, we're gonna focus on rhythm, percussion, right? But it's just a simple flip of feedback forward instead of feedback backwards, feedback forward, right? And the most important thing, and I truly believe this right now, because I say it again, individualized instruction is not isolated. Music is not created for a teacher to grade. It is created to make the world a better place. We have students who love band, who love orchestra, who love choir. And we have some of those babies that is their life. That is their reason for going to school, right? That was my reason for going to school. I was there. I was one of those kids. And they can't make music with the band right now. They can't go out on the marching band show. They can't sing in the choir. If we replace that experience with music theory games and note naming experiences and things like that don't let them feel fulfilled or don't let them create and make music, we're not doing them a service, right? And if we replace that with nothing but assignments where students have to watch a video, do a thing, and turn it in for a grade, we're not perpetuating the point of music, which is music is created to make the world a better place. So we have individualized learning goals about students making music and sharing it with their families, students creating music at home and sending it, and we can send it as a link to the school. What if students compose music to brighten the day of all the teachers that are trying to figure out online learning, right? Like, how can we think about all of these learning experiences and that we can take this opportunity for students to create music to serve a purpose, right? And I have there's countless examples of how this can work, right? Students can compose melodies to understand melodic shape, and I will make this PowerPoint accessible. Students can learn note names, individualized. I have, a few different examples. I'll kind of go through these. Think about, let's talk about melodies. So a student opens a note flight score and composes 3 different melodies, and they all share it out. And then the students talk about which ones are different shapes. Now find 2 melodies of different shapes, put them together, let's extend and call it counter melody. Let's keep going, right? Learning note names and intervals in theory by actively composing with these elements. We're gonna work on intervals, thirds, fourths, and fifths. Here's an example of the notes I want you to use. Now use these intervals and make something that sounds good. Give students a bunch of music, find music in the note flight content libraries, create your own and say, color all the perfect fourths and perfect thirds blue in this music. Listen to it. Try to listen with your eyes closed and hear that third, right? Don't just pop it on a screen and select it on a multiple choice. Have them listen to music and engage in music to learn these tools. Have them arrange popular songs. Play it with soundcheck. Learn to play with soundcheck in note flight. Record passages with different phrasings. Talk about how different phrasing could actually talk about emotion. So the final product in this 4th example is not a turned-in recording, but it's a reflection on, hey, I recorded something and I played it soft and dragged the notes out, and then I played it fast and articulate, and my friends thought that this version expressed anger, and this version expressed sadness, but then I did it at a medium dynamic and I played the notes light and bouncing, and then they thought that expressed happiness. And so why do those dialing? Think about giving out to students now the opportunity to explore how phrasing, dynamic, and articulation options are perceived as emotions by their peers. Note flight and a Google form, and you could go all fall with that, right? And of course, using YouTube to find a model of performances. Sync that YouTube video with a note flight score. Play along. There's countless examples, right? So we're going to end on time. Note Flight Learn. I see a lot of questions coming in with Note Flight Learn. Note Flight Learn is a K-12 and college level music notation and performance assessment experience. It works on the web. It works on any device that you can open a browser on and get online. At the heart of Note Flight is a full music notation editor where students can create and compose music and share it and collaborate. You can provide instant lessons, whether it's on your own, through Google, through Canvas, Moodle, Schoology, Blackboard, Music First. It all integrates, and you can create instant lessons where students open it, get their own version, do the thing, and turn it in, or also share it with their peers for feedback, right? You can record audio directly into a Note Flight score. So students could play and record into Note Flight so you could hear their performance or others can hear. Students can compose music, but then play it. So when their friend or their peer or their parents listen to it, they can hear their interpretation. I don't care how good your notation or computerized sounds are, they're never going to breathe, phrase, dictate for you, right? Sound check. Students can turn anything in Note Flight into a sound check performance assessment and get immediate feedback on their playing. They can have goals. They can performing and be able to get a play along experience that gives them feedback on their ability to play this work. And it's so exciting for No Flight right now. Everything could be collaborative. Everything could be provided feedback. You have unlimited classes and groups. There's hundreds, actually I should update this slide. There's thousands of included lessons and songs available. We just announced you can also access essential elements content in No Flight Learn. We do directly integrate with Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, Schoology, other learning management systems, as well as Google Classroom. This is a direct integration with No Flight Learn and Soundcheck and content into these platforms. So you can do your assignments from Canvas or Schoology, you can do your assignments from Music First, you can do your assignments from Google Classroom, and we'll have a Google specific webinar later in this series. No Flight Learn is $69 for 10 users and $2 for every additional. Soundcheck is $3 a user, content's $3 a user. So you could go $8 a user and have everything. You could have No Flight Learn for K-12 and add Soundcheck and content for the middle school and the high school. We're totally flexible. noflight.com/learn. If you're interested in purchasing adaptable music and being able to legally arrange it for your students, export the PDFs, if you need adaptable content, check out No Flight Marketplace. In fact, if you're arranging music right now, you could even sell your arrangements. So check out No Flight Marketplace as well. So how can we look at this experience? Let's come out of this stronger than ever. Let's not think that temporarily we got to keep kids busy online until we can all come back to whole class instruction, because we have an opportunity. When you think about individualized, authentic learning, personalized learning, all the things we talk about, why have we not been doing these all along? Let's take this opportunity to harness our skills as educators and our students and reinvent our curriculums to include this, right? Let's not just find something to do online until everything goes back to normal. Let's come out of this stronger than ever. Let's build new curriculums that effectively blend whole class instruction and musical performances with individualized learning and musicianship to create better human beings and change lives through music, right? Let's take this time in the fall to focus on individualized learning, and then in the spring, hopefully things are safer, we have a vaccine, we have more knowledge, more science, more data, and we can be more effectively in whole class. But let's focus on individualized now, because there's so much meaningful things we can do, because music is a healing power. Music brings us joy and happiness. Students should not just be doing music theory games and doing note naming and just things to keep them busy online. Students should be actively engaged in creating their own personalized learning opportunities and creating, recording, and making music to share with others, right? So I know this is a stressful time. I know this is harder than ever, but y'all, when things are tough, don't get bitter, get better. Let's not get bitter, let's get better, and let's come out of this with better music education experiences for everyone. I appreciate you all joining today. If you would like a copy of the slide presentation, you can email john@noflight.com. You can learn more about NoFlight, of course, at noflight.com/learn. And please join us for the other webinars in this series. Specifically, the next one will be just no slides, all demoing No Flight Learn live in person. And I look forward to seeing you all at that. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for watching today, and have a wonderful, wonderful fall experience.